Have your contact lenses gotten so uncomfortable you feel like trashing them?
Ladies and gentlemen, Sharon Stone!
You like playing games, don't you?
Games are fun.
We can help you love your lenses.
I didn't kill him.
She was paid $500,000 for the role that would define her.
I do think the film is misogynistic. It doesn't like women, does it?
Oh, I love women. You must be wrong.
Her co-star in the same film took home $14 million.
Basic Instinct, rated R.
She had to find out, mid-production, from her own director, that she was the 13th choice for the part, and that he had been refusing to call her by her real name on set, addressing her as Karen instead, because using her real name implied a level of respect he had not yet had.
What about the famous scene that's attracted so much attention where you have to flash? Were you comfortable doing that?
I was comfortable doing it. It was really my idea that she would do that. It's not a sexual move, it's a power move. She's telling these people in the room, I have absolute power over you. Do you see what I mean? Do you see you cannot beat me?
The most analyzed shot of 1990s cinema, the one that turned her face into a global name, may or may not have been filmed with her informed consent, depending on whose memoir you trust.
When I did it, I had no idea that it would be so explicitly seen.
And the woman who looked like she owned that goddamn room was, by every measurable financial metric, the cheapest piece of furniture in it. If you only have 30 seconds, here's the bottom line of this video. Catherine Tramell is a Hitchcock blonde with a doctorate and a body count. She is a working novelist who chose the role of femme fatale on purpose, walked herself into the genre, and walked back out alive past the credits. She is dressed head to toe in cream, ivory, oatmeal, putty, all to weaponize innocence. And she is played by a Pisces woman with a reported IQ of 154, and a survival history that would have flattened most people 3 times over. The seduction is intellect as foreplay, but if you would like more than 30 seconds, and, who turns down more? Follow me.
Welcome. I'm Kira, and this is your beauty blueprint.
I have spent a whole week reading, watching, and frankly just stewing in all things Basic Instinct, and what I'm bringing you today is the best of those findings. Before we get into it, quick note, I designed a Basic Instinct inspired t-shirt for us, and the link is on your screen now, as well as below in the description. It is deliberately understated, deliberately monochrome, exactly the kind of thing Catherine would approve of without ever saying so out loud. She would notice, she just wouldn't compliment you on it. And besides, we have gathered quite a range there by now, so please do have a look at our designs. They're always episode related, of course. Now, settle in, pour yourself a Jack Daniels over a single large ice cube with a twist of lemon, no garnish theater, no fuss. Because the very first thing Catherine Tramell orders at a bar in this film is Jack Daniels on the rocks, and the woman sure as hell does not negotiate her drink order.
Do you have any Coke?
I just love Coke with Jack Daniels.
Got a Pepsi in the fridge.
Oh, it's not really the same thing now, is it?
No, it's not.
If brown liquor is not your thing, the upgraded alternative is a bone-cold Vesper Martini in a coupe. Colorless, dangerous, looks like absolutely nothing on the table. Which is exactly the point. For snack purposes, 1 piece of very dark chocolate, a small dish of Marcona almonds, or oysters if you happen to be filming yourself in a chic kitchen. Avoid anything that requires explaining. Alright, let's begin with the woman who built the woman. Here's a tiny backstory. Sharon Stone was born March 10th, 1958, in Meadville, Pennsylvania, the second of 4 children, daughter of a tool and die maker and a bookkeeper. Her childhood was, in her own published words, not what anyone should have to survive. Her maternal grandfather sexually abused her and her younger sister Kelly when they were toddlers. And according to her memoir, her grandmother facilitated the abuse by locking the girls in the room with him. When that grandfather died of a heart attack, Stone was 14 and her sister was 11. She walked up to the casket at the wake, in her own retelling, and poked the body to confirm he was actually dead. She looked over at her sister. Her sister understood. It was over. You don't get Catherine Tramell from a woman who wasn't in some way already pre-acquainted with the Gothic. Now, astrology, because I know some of you are here for it. The most widely cited chart is a 2005 rectification by an astrologer based on a quote Stone herself gave The Guardian. If that rectified chart is correct, she's a Pisces sun with Virgo rising and Pluto sitting directly on her ascendant. Translation, for those of you who do not speak astrologer, this is a woman whose body and physical presence are read by everyone as a kind of transformational threat, a perfectionist who is also a wrecking ball. Pluto on the ascendant is the placement of someone who survives near-death events and reinvents herself out of the rubble. Her Sun, her Mercury, and the asteroid Lilith are all stacked together in Pisces in the 7th house. The 7th house is the house of partnership, of performance, of the one-on-one mirror. That stellium reads as a woman whose entire identity, voice, and shadow feminine get activated through being looked at, being projected onto, and being locked in single combat with the people across from her. She becomes herself, in other words, by being seen, which, if you have ever watched Stone in an interrogation scene, or a Vanity Fair interview, or honestly her Instagram grid, well, it tracks. Her Mars is exalted in Capricorn in the 5th house, which stands for a slow, disciplined, late-blooming, creative ambition. She did not break through until 32, which, in 1990s, Hollywood was retirement age, and yet she has continued ascending into her 60s. Her moon in Sagittarius gives her the restless American largeness, the storytelling instinct, the impossibility to be domesticated. And Sharon Stone was, by every account, a child prodigy. She entered 2nd grade at just 5. Her IQ is 154. She entered Edinburgh State University in Pennsylvania at 15 on a full creative writing scholarship. She did not finish the degree at the time. She went back to it online in 2016 after watching Hillary Clinton run for president. She was Miss Crawford County. She was discovered at 17 at a pageant in Hershey, Pennsylvania by, I am not making this up, Mohammed Ali, who personally called her father to predict she would be a star. She signed with Ford Models in 1977, did the Milan and Paris circuit, came back to New York, and started acting.
I moved to New York and I modeled there, and then I lived in Europe and modeled there, and then I thought, this is really stupid, I'd better go home. And
Really?
Yeah.
How old were you when you were modeling in Europe?
About 19.
Oh, man, that must have been great.
It was weird.
Really? How come? I mean,
well,
why?
you know, I came from a very small town where people know each other and act kind of normal.
Right.
And the next thing I knew, I was on this jet set fast circle with a bunch of playboys, you know.
Oh, man, you poor thing. Yes, it's time to come home. And what cities in Europe?
Well, I lived in Milan, in Italy.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to Paris for the weekend and decided to live there.
Yeah. Man, there ought to be a fund for people like you who've had to suffer like that.
Her first film credit was as an extra in a Woody Allen movie, Stardust Memories. Have you seen it? It's a delightful film. It also has Charlotte Rampling, of course. I made a video on her too. Sadly, it didn't take off, but it's worth a watch. She's one of the best women to ever live, I think. Well, Sharon's real cinematic breakthrough was Paul Verhoeven's Total Recall in 1990, where she played Arnold Schwarzenegger's homicidal wife. Paul Verhoeven cast her in Basic Instinct because of one specific second in that film, the way the evil in her eyes could become the love of her life inside of a beat. And romantically, well, she has been married twice and engaged a great deal more than twice. She dated Dwight Yoakam briefly in 1992. She took him to the Oscars and then, in a later interview, famously described kissing him as a, quote, dirt sandwich. I have never personally recovered from that sentence. It's hilarious. She married television producer Michael Greenberg in '84, divorced in '90. She got engaged to a producer on Sliver who left his wife for her, and then she returned his ring by FedEx. She got engaged to her assistant director on The Quick and the Dead. On Valentine's Day 1998, she married Phil Bronstein, then the executive editor of the San Francisco Examiner. They adopted a son in 2000. In June 2022, she revealed on Instagram that she had lost 9 children to miscarriage over her life. Bronstein filed for divorce in 2003. Sharon Stone's assessment of that period, in her own words, I was suckered. Then there's the stroke. Late September 2001, standing behind a sofa in her San Francisco home, she felt what she has described as a lightning bolt to the head. Her vertebral artery had completely ruptured. She bled into her brain for 9 days. She underwent endovascular coiling. She lost 18% of her body mass and came out of the hospital, in her words, looking like teeth on a stick. She has described the experience as a near-death tunnel of light, with people she had loved who had died looking down at her, before she felt herself get kicked back into her body. She was in her early 40s. Recovery took roughly 2 years to function and 7 to fully recover. While she was incapacitated, the staggering $18 million she had saved disappeared into other people's hands. Her bank accounts, her phone, her refrigerator, all put in other names during her recovery, and she lost primary custody of her son. So that is the woman we're dealing with. She is also the actress who, in 1996, attended the Oscars in a Valentino skirt and a Gap turtleneck because the Valentino top hadn't arrived in time and she just rolled with it. She is also the painter who, during the 2020 pandemic, started with an adult paint-by-numbers kit, moved to real brushes, and has now had solo shows in Berlin and San Francisco. The Pulitzer-winning critic Jerry Saltz has called her a freedom machine who walked through the valley of death and into an art supply store. She is also an officer and a commander of the French Order of Arts and Letters. There's one more piece of context I want to give you before we get into the film itself. After Basic Instinct, Stone made Sliver, The Specialist, then The Quick and the Dead, which she produced and on which she personally paid Leonardo DiCaprio's salary out of her own fee because the studio refused to cast him. Then Casino in 1995 as Ginger McKenna. She won the Golden Globe for that role. She received her one and only Oscar nomination, lost to Susan Sarandon, and she has told The Guardian just this year that Casino effectively killed her career. Her quote, "I got nothing. I never got any more parts. Sometimes I think it was because I was too good. Sometimes I think when you get nominated for an Academy Award, and the greatest living actor on the planet doesn't, that's an imbalance in the male-female dynamic that is not great." Sit with that for a minute. She is, in short, several women at once. Which brings us, finally, to Catherine. The screenplay for Basic Instinct was written in just 13 days by Joe Esterhazy on an Olivetti typewriter in 1990. He sent it out for auction. By noon the next day, the bids were over $2 million. Carolco Pictures won at $3 million. A record for a spec script at the time, the equivalent of roughly $7 million in today's money. Variety's headline the next morning read, "A new era dawns in Hollywood. Paul Verhoeven, fresh off Total Recall, signed to direct." He then immediately tried to rewrite the script. Joe Esterhazy and the producer quit. Paul Verhoeven hired a writer named Gary Goldman to do 4 rewrites, and he eventually admitted, and I'm quoting, that his own ideas had been undramatic and really stupid, and the production reverted to Joe Esterhazy's original. Michael Douglas was cast at $14 million. The female lead was offered to Kim Basinger, Julia Roberts, Greta Scacchi, Meg Ryan, Deborah Winger, Michelle Pfeiffer, Gina Davis, Kathleen Turner, Kelly Lynch, Ellen Barkin, Mariel Hemingway, Demi Moore. That is a hell of a lot of no's. Sharon Stone wanted it badly. Her manager, and this is real, broke into a studio office locker to get her a copy of the script. Paul Verhoeven had to fight to test her. Michael Douglas refused to test with her for months. When she finally got the role, Paul Verhoeven told her, and this is from her own memoir and her 2023 speech at the New York Women in Film and Television Muse Awards, that she was the 13th choice, that he refused to use her real name on set, that he was going to call her Karen throughout production. She has called this one of the most degrading parts of the experience. And then there is the scene. You know the scene. The interrogation room, the men in a semicircle, the white dress, the leg cross. Now, about that scene, I want to handle this honestly, because there are 2 named adults with verbatim accounts on opposite sides, and the only journalistic thing to do here is let them both speak. Paul Verhoeven's account, given to Icon in 2017 and to Variety in 2021, Stone knew exactly what was being filmed. He says she removed her own underwear, that they had discussed it in detail, that the only reason he did not let her see the dailies was that he knew she would object once she saw how visible the shot really was. Stone's account, from her 2021 Vanity Fair memoir excerpt and every interview since. She was told the white of her clothing was reflecting, and they needed her to remove her underwear briefly. She did not know what was actually being captured. She only found out when she saw the cut in a screening room full of male executives and lawyers. She slapped Paul Verhoeven across the face and walked out. Both of those accounts are on the record. I'm not going to pretend I know which one is more accurate. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in the middle.
When I saw it, after a period of time had passed and I was no longer embodying that woman, that character, as an audience member, I was just, so it was impaled, this energy hit me. I was like, I didn't do it. Can I take that back? I'd like to take that back now.
Even if you took the Verhoeven version at face value, and you can be your own judge of that, The broader pattern around her on that set, the pay, the Karen, the actresses ahead of her, the studio makeup she had to wipe off in her trailer tells you very clearly who held the power and who did not. Queer Nation protested at theaters. And yet, 3 decades later, Catherine Tramell has been reclaimed inside queer film culture as a kind of bisexual anti-heroine, a femme fatale who has more sexual agency than literally anyone else in the movie. Tammy Bruce of Now LA called it the most blatantly misogynistic film in recent memory. Camille Paglia, around the same time, called it a feminist triumph, and called Sharon Stone's performance one of the great performances by a woman in screen history. Stay with me here, because I'm about to walk you through how this woman, who was treated on her own set like a body double for a part she'd lobbied to get, walked off that production and proceeded to invent the most studied silhouette of the entire decade. But first, a question for you in the comments. I genuinely want to know, Catherine or Roxy? If you have seen the film, you know exactly what I'm asking. If you haven't, that is your weekend assignment. Please tell me below. Camille Paglia, contrarian feminist scholar who has championed Stone's performance from the moment the film opened, called Catherine Tramell, on the 2001 Collector's Edition DVD commentary and across her writings, a great vamp figure like Mona Lisa herself, like a pagan goddess. Catherine Tramell is a femme fatale who rejects the genre's punishment clause. Phyllis Dietrichson dies in Double Indemnity. Alex Forrest dies in Fatal Attraction. But Catherine Tramell goes home. She writes the next book. Now, this is not just a horny thriller, although it is also a horny thriller. This is a movie about authorship. A 2011 academic essay by Juan Fernandez calls Catherine a postmodern femme fatale. A femme fatale who has read the genre, who knows she is one, who has clearly rewritten that part in her own way. Pretty cool. Her seduction is not visual. Her seduction is conversational. She uses the word fuck the way other women use mascara. She is a Berkeley alumni with a double major in psychology and literature. She has a PhD. She has written novels that predict the murders that take place in the film. She is, in other words, 3 full steps ahead of every man in the room, and the only reason any of them gets to look at her face at any given moment is because she has decided to let them. This is what makes her different from the 40s or 50s noir woman. The classic femme fatale is dangerous because she is a sexual being. Catherine Tramell is dangerous because she is a writer, and writers, as anyone who has ever dated one will tell you, are the most genuinely terrifying lovers on earth. There's one specific moment in the film I want to call out, because it's the moment the whole persona crystallizes. The detectives press Catherine on whether she'd ever consider killing someone, the way Johnny Boz was killed. She replies that she already has, in her novel. When they point out that the novel's murder matches the real one exactly, she shrugs it off. Writing about a murder hardly makes someone a killer. In fact, she notes, it would make her seem less likely to do it, since she'd be the obvious suspect. The whole exchange is structured to make her look either coolly innocent, or coolly daring the detectives to prove otherwise. Which is precisely the point. She's all casual about it, faintly amused at the men who think they've caught her. That delivery, the flatness, the boredom, is the persona in one beat. Most femme fatales are trying to convince you they're a threat. But Catherine Tramell is bored that you haven't figured it out yet. The blueprint of predatory minimalism is hiding in plain sight here, and we're about to break it down for ourselves, piece by piece. Ellen Moroznik was the costume designer on Basic Instinct. She is the auteur of the look, and I want to give her name some real airtime, because nobody else does. Ellen Moroznik has said that the choice was deliberately Hitchcockian, deliberately ice blonde, deliberately classic and contemporary rather than vampish, deliberately monochrome cream. Her exact quote on the wardrobe: "I like the choice of white. It is in opposition to black. There is always tension in opposition." Stop on that sentence for a second. When every other femme fatale in the entire history of American cinema was being put into black satin and red lipstick, Catherine Tramell was being put into the colors of innocence to communicate that the most dangerous woman in any given room is the one who looks like she just got back from yoga. The interrogation dress, sleeveless, fitted at the waist, just above the knee, with a matching coat. That single outfit is the template every off-duty 90s heiress, every Bond villain's girlfriend, every Sofia Coppola-style moodboard, and every minimalist fashion influencer has been copying. The hair, Kim Novak Vertigo reference that Moroznik has explicitly confirmed. The hairstylist on the film was Paul LeBlanc, who won the Best Makeup and Hairstyling Oscar, and who designed Princess Leia's braids. The man understood his way around a blonde. The makeup, minimal, a soft taupe to warm brown smoky eye. never black, because black would have read 80s. And Mirajnik was committed to the no-decade look, a pinky nude lip, sculpted contour to give the face that high-angled blade quality on camera. And here is the headline for this entire beauty section. Sharon Stone, in her Allure cover story, said this: "When I got on Basic Instinct, they hired a makeup artist that put on pounds of makeup every day, and every day I went to my trailer and took the makeup off. But I wasn't allowed to choose my makeup artist, nor was my name above the title on the poster." Accessories, 0. No necklaces. No statement earrings. The cigarette is the only accessory she carries. And yes, before anyone writes in, we are not endorsing the cigarettes. Please don't take up smoking on my account. But symbolically and visually, it functions as a punctuation mark on a body that refuses to wear punctuation marks any other way. If you are still with me, and bless you if you are, please do hit subscribe right now, because what we are about to do next is translate predatory minimalism into your Tuesday morning, without, ideally, ending up on an FBI watch list. Please press thumbs up while you're at it. It helps a great deal. Alright, 5 tips, very practically speaking. 1. Commit to a single tonal palette. Build the entire wardrobe in your chosen tone: cream, navy, slate, charcoal, whatever you decide is yours. And you will start to look less like a person dressing themselves in the morning and more like a character. A character will always be remembered. 2. The no makeup trick requires real good skincare underneath. Cream foundation will not save you if your skin barrier has left the building. You cannot fake a face that looks like it sleeps 8 hours. You have to actually sleep 8 hours and take good care of your face.
There's an old saying that for the first half of your life, you get the face you were born with. And for the second half of your life, you get the face you deserve.
3. Underplay the brows, especially if you're blonde. 4. Restraint is the loudest thing you can do in our time and age. If everyone is shouting, the quiet woman in the cream coat is the only person anyone remembers. This is true at parties, at meetings, at family dinners, and regrettably, on dating apps. 5. Accessorize with your behavior. The single most expensive thing Catherine Tramell wears in the entire film is her composure. Composure cannot be bought, drop-shipped, or borrowed from a friend's closet. You build it for real, the slow way, by not showing discomfort, even when you feel it. That one is free. You're welcome. And before we close out, to every single one of you who has signed up for Beauty Blueprints channel membership, thank you. You are the major reason this channel can hope to exist. If you've been thinking about joining, the join button is right under this video. Come hang with us. And, well, let's just say the story always belongs to whoever is willing to write the next chapter. I've queued up the next chapter for you here. I'll see you soon. Love, Kira. Now go create your own blueprint.